All right, guys, so I know I'm going to be creating a trim sheet to take care of a lot of details on this building I'm working on. And this trim sheet's going to have to also act something like an atlas, but I got to do like these steel frame entrances, the doorways. There's going to be all kinds of other types of railing that goes out here and whatnot. So I'm going to have to create a pretty complicated looking little trim sheet. It's going to be like a little modular trim sheet. All right. And so I'm going to end up doing that in Substance Designer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start a new package here, start a new substance graph, and just going to do empty for now. Okay, so a little substance here as well. But the thing about it is that I need to lay it out in a certain way so that I can utilize it as good as possible, but also have as many different types of varieties as possible. And then I'm going to want to create it all in Designer. And so what we're looking at here is Affinity Designer. All right, so you could use Photoshop. You could use pretty much anything. You could even use Blender just to kind of prove a point here. Is if you were in Blender, and we'll do a new scene for this, and you created a plane. Right, there's an add-on called GrabDoc. Right, so if I was to take this plane and just start cutting it up, I need to create what's known as a color map or color mask. So like say I did something like this, and I separate all these. I press Y, Control X to dissolve. All right, so now I'm gonna just start splitting this mesh up, and I'm gonna press A. So using Y, it splits the faces. Now you can do P, separate by loose parts. They're all individual elements now, right? And so GrabDoc, when you set up a scene, it might come in something like so. This obviously was way too small. I don't even know what I need to make, so scale by 10 for that one. I have a different grid setup, so it kind of comes in, everything comes in smaller. All right. And we'll turn the visible off here so that it doesn't show up. But basically, you'll see that there's these different selections down here. One of them is called a matte ID. So some people call them material IDs, color IDs, whatever the case may be. It's just a type of masking almost. And so if we just preview this matte ID, click OK, you'll see it generates random colors for the different elements. Some of them are repeating, so I'd have to fix that. But um, you can definitely change this, right? And try to, I don't know, maybe if you apply it or something, it'll come in different or something like that. If not, you might have to do it manually. So just keep that in mind. You might want to actually assign materials and stuff like that. But generally, this only happens when you start separating from each other. And so I'm actually not even real sure how you go about stopping that because it's acting like a duplicate more or less. And let's go back to the Matte ID there. Yeah, you can see that's occurring again. All right, so you can do object or vertex color. Let's try that. That didn't work. Material. You can see the materials when you start applying new materials here. Solid view. Let's leave the map. Come back to it. Okay. And so when each one of these gets a new material and you change the color here, it should come in that color. If not, it's not this color. It's going to be under viewport right here, this color. All right, so when you do that matte ID now, you get that. Okay, so a little workaround there because it happens to do that sometimes. It's good it popped up so you guys understand what's going on because you'll just have to apply new materials every time, basically. But you can also, as it said there, you could use vertex colors. And so if you took an object, went into vertex color, changed it to something, and strength up max, and just color it in real quick. That could also work, doing things like that. So you do a matte ID preview with vertex colors. There you go. Okay, so you can generate these kind of masks in Blender itself, but I think it's a lot easier doing it in something like Affinity. All right, and so this is going to be a 2048 Affinity Designer or Illustrator or Adobe Illustrator, whatever you want to use. You can just start to lay out your little blocks how you want them to be anyways. This one should snap there. Okay. So I could do something like that. Press V, hold Alt, slide it out, let it snap into place. So I can get that going on. I could select all 4 of those and scale them out to there, right? And because they're all separated pretty much, I can just run around and tag them with different colors super fast and change them as needed, all right? This is useful because you can modify these later on and it's all vectors. So it doesn't really matter if it's out of shape or whatever, or it's not quite the right size or anything like that. So let's do this one like a pink, yeah. So we'll leave the bottom white just for example purposes here. And we can save this. All right, so when you save this out, Control Shift S, we're just going to do a PNG and we're going to save it to the desktop. Call it mask. And a Substance Designer here. The easiest way to get a material up and going is you just add a node. Oops, sorry. Just press spacebar here. We're going to do one called base material, right? And this base material, if we come over here, you need to turn on base color, normal map, roughness, metallic, ambient occlusion, and height. You'll notice we don't have emissives or opacity, so this doesn't work very well for those. Just keep that in mind. And you'll see they have an out and an in. And the reason why this is good is because you can just simply right click on this node and you can create output nodes if you need the output nodes, which you don't actually have to create them right away, but you can also create input nodes. So create those from hidden connectors, put no. It's only going to create what you have available. And as you can see, it's already kind of set up a bunch of these. And what do we got here? Ambient occlusion. We're looking for height. And we're looking for normal. This is up here. And we're looking for, yeah, ambient occlusion. My bad. All right, so this is where things get kind of fun. We're going to need the normal for the normal here. We'll replace that, delete it. Okay, for the height here, we'll just delete that for now. For ambient occlusion, delete the ambient occlusion. We need ambient occlusion HBAOA. Toss that in. All right, and from the height, I'm going to drag out a dot node. And that's just going to plug everything into that. And increase the strength of the normal to something. Usually I think higher is better at first. Bump it down later to like 15, 20 or something like that. All right. And so now you're used to using, if you're used to using Substance Designer, you could toss in patterns or noises or whatever the case may be. So we'll just do cells 2 here, plug it into there, and voila, nothing happens. This is where the fun begins because normally you have to select each output node and drag it over and connect it to that. Well, this, you just drag that whole base material and boom, it's all set up. You can see our roughness here, our metallic, and so we can drag this around and do what we need to do with it, right? So make this a little bit more rough. That base color up here has not been defined, so it's just black. And we'll make it like a light gray. And the material itself, we got to edit it real quick. It's using parallax occlusion right now for the height representation. So when you play with scale, it does that number. But you could always swap it over to tessellation right here. Okay. And then you just go ahead and scale there and then change the tessellation factor up like so. And so now you got a pretty good starting point to play with the height map and generate your own. Generally speaking, I watched an awesome video from Javier Perez on the NVIDIA Studios YouTube channel where he talks about how he creates his masks to kind of do these trim sheets and stuff, which is awesome. But the problem is when you start getting a lot of trim sheets going, like a lot of little elements to a trim sheet, it kind of can be somewhat slow in a way working in that manner. So like the way he would do it is he would generate a shape, and that shape you would just take that and modify it real quick, like say on Y you want to create a trim, there you go, and then you could plug that into a transform, right? And then the transform you can kind of shift it around, so it's not really that bad. But when it becomes a problem is when you want to do like a half section and use it more like an atlas, right? And so then you end up trying to, you know, squish it in half. So over here, you got to do like a 0.5. And I've actually had, this isn't horrible, like it still works, but it does tend to add up. And then you got to do like a negative 0.25, it starts to look a little bit weird sometimes too. But you can see you'll have to do that for each little element that you want to create. So when you got a bunch of really small trims or whatever, that's going to become a problem. It's so while this does work, he would run it into a blend. He would use it as the mask. Then he would have like something like this plugged in as the base, perhaps. This would all plug into our output. And so you'd be able to do things like this, where you can mask out a section if you wanted to. And toss in some patterns. So in this case, let's just do some tile random. We'll mix these two. You'll see how that works there, right? So it's pretty interesting how it works, but I got a better one for you now. And that is going to be simply taking this color map that we created, right? And we import it from file, right? Here it is, the mask. And you can link it or you can import it as it is. I'm just going to link for this one, but you can, if you import it, it creates a folder with a copy of it in it, basically wherever you save your substance file. So let's keep that in mind. So instead of using this system here, I found it's pretty interesting because you're going to eventually have to have multiple masks for every little section that you're working on. I found this a lot more interesting. You take this color ID, basically, you run it into color to mask. And now you have a color to mask node. And now you can plug this in to right there, but it's not set up as, it's not configured yet. So you can see we have options here to configure it. We can select with the eyedroppers. So if you double click on this one, you can see all your colors very clearly. You can click on this one, it'll come back. And now you can just pick which one you want it to actually work with, right? And at first, nothing happens. Nothing happens because you got to actually expand the mask range. At 0, nothing's going to happen. And so now you can do a mask range, and you can also adjust by adjust the softness value here as well. And so that plugs in just like that, real quick, like okay. And so we'll leave that one as tiles. We'll put in a uniform color real quick as black, so we can see what we're adjusting and what we're not adjusting. Okay, and this one's complaining now. I'm not sure what it's complaining about. It's L16. It's trying to go to color. So let's change this to grayscale. So you see it's L8, luminance 8, and that's luminance 16. It was color 8. So now if you turn it to grayscale, it turns into luminance. This adopts it from this one going into the background here. So this one now works. And when it gets to here, you'll see it stays as an L8, right? But then they turn into an L16 down the line. And so a color 8 there. So it's kind of interesting how that works. But anyways, so just pointing that out. The same process is going to take place, basically. You're going to need those same 2 nodes all the way down for however many different colors you have. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so we're going to need 7 of these in total. We're not going to do all 7 because it's just going to eat up time, but you get the idea. You'll set up 7 of these. So we'll do 4 for an example. That's the beginning, okay? And here we go. Let's go ahead and drop in some different tile generators just so we can see what's going to happen. We got weave and weave generator. There we go. So we got all these mixed in here now. And this is going to go to a blend like that, right? And it's going to blend here, and then it's going to blend here. All right. So we'll plug all those in at the top. And then all of that's going to plug in the very back here. Okay. So you see how that works? So now we got all this nonsense going on. But these are going to be used as our masks. When we plug those in, we have to still configure them. So just go ahead and bring that image up, select here, do a color dropper. All right. So be able to mask all these in real quick. So color drop where you want them. Right then and there, you can see where this is starting to go. All right. Already got some pretty interesting kind of results going, even though I just threw generators in there, right? And something a little bit more fun you can do is you can add a bevel to the mask if you want. So if you add bevel and do this number, you'll see it blurs it quite a bit. But it adds for some interesting blend effects. And then if you adjust this very carefully, you can just kind of chisel off the edges of the trim there. Do things like that. So that's kind of interesting. And you can change it from round to angular. So that's a good way of working with that, I think. This one you could also bevel, plug it in the height here at the top. You can see how that starts to work out. Okay. And this one here is looking pretty sketchy. It's like, it looks like it has issues, right? And you'll notice that all of our nodes have become luminance 8s. I thought they were going to switch to 16s for some reason, but they didn't. So this one, if we change it to luminance 16, they'll all turn to luminance 16, and I'll fix that issue. So output format, you change it to absolute 8 bits to 16 bits, and you'll see that happens right there. Okay, so that's going to give you a more precise height map here, and it's going to have less. It'll have less of those stepping issues. I'll put it that way. Shouldn't have any, but it still potentially could happen. I think on 16s. Although I haven't really ran into that, so I don't know. But let's see. So these are all masked fairly well. You can see they're working. It just covers them up though. So, and you do that for your whole material. So now all of this stuff becomes it becomes your area to make this material however you see fit, however you want it to look. So you could do, maybe after that bevel, we want to do a levels, right? And we can adjust the level of it. Black and white levels here. Let's see what we can do. All right. Guess we're just playing with that slider for today, for now. We'll make it like that. And then let's drop the value of the white. You see how it's changing its height here in the image? So we can do things like that, which are pretty important. We can bring up the base as well. We can get some nice looks going on. All right. This weave, I think we only got one piece of it in there, which creates this like cylinder basically. That's pretty interesting, but you can bump up like the tiling if you wanted to, do something like that. You can see right off the bat, this one definitely needs some kind of balance to it because they look like they're a little too high. So we could do the levels there and just kind of tweak it a little bit. I want the base to come up. I want the top to come down. Working it to a mid-gray is usually the best idea. Instead of trying to push it all the way forward or all the way back, unless you want that effect. Right? We see here this is now occurring. It still has a little jankiness going on to it. Let's see what we got going on here. Nope. Okay, so you could try doing like a blur HQ on this one, and it should fix that, hopefully. But you have to be very small increment of blurring. You want to make sure it's pretty high quality. So see, as I make it smaller, it starts to come back. Yeah, so trying to generate that shape off that probably wouldn't be the best of ideas, but you see we can roll it out too with this. Maybe adjust it with that a little bit. Let's put that blur up just a little bit more. All right, so a little softer perhaps, but there you go. And yeah, so you can go around and start doing all your other materials like this. You're just going to keep repeating this pattern over and over basically. And because we worked off that mask, we're good to go here. Something else to consider is that you could plug that same mask into all of these different ones, right? You don't need these extra nodes for here. And you could just swap that out later on with adjustments. So if you want to just change positions around, as long as your materials aren't aligned up perfectly with the mask where it was, you should be able to do a number like this and drop in like a mask 2. So if one's working, or let's say the first one wasn't working that well, we can always just import, you guessed it, from another one. You can hold shift, click here, drag and drop it there. So we can just update it. And you can see how that worked out. So the patterns usually lay back out pretty good if you move them in certain kind of increments. And so you could do this without having to readjust them usually, but certain things that might be more custom, when you update that mask, you'll probably have to readjust them somehow. So just keep that in mind. Probably don't want to swap that mask around too much, but if needed, it's pretty useful because you see it just auto updates everything like stupid fast. And so, anyways, that's it for this video. Ran on a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but hopefully you get a good idea on how you can start utilizing Substance Designer to start creating your trim sheets, having a little bit of fun with it, and doing it pretty fast and efficient. Like it's really not as slow as you probably thought it was. Within like 30 minutes to an hour, and once you get comfortable in Substance, you should be able to, pump out some pretty decent materials. And it's really not that slow at all. So, one good solid trim sheet, and then you can run with that and create a whole environment off of it. So, well, in some respects, certain environments are easier than others. But anyways, so hope you enjoyed the video, and I will check you guys out in the next one. All right, take care.